Is it time for me, or are you guys going to play another number? Okay, cool. That's what I thought, but I wanted to make sure. Hello, my name is Greg Nosan. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm a worship associate here at the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Cleveland. I'm also proud to be a member of the GCC core team, and I'm so pleased to be part of the service we've crafted for you this morning. We acknowledge that we're gathering on the original lands of the Erie and of the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe peoples, also known as the Three Fires Council. We recognize the need to learn more about our complex and sometimes painful histories, to care for the land we inhabit, and to show respect to the diverse peoples and cultures who preceded us, as well as those who gather here now. Our congregation is working to build relationships with the Lake Erie Native American Council as a way of living into these words. This community strives to celebrate the inherent worth and dignity of every person, and part of that celebration includes radical hospitality. Whoever you are, whatever you look like, whomever you love, this is your place. Wherever you come from, whatever you believe, however you found us, we invite you to share your story, tell us what matters to you, and help us shape this congregation together. Each of us is drawn here for our own reasons. For me, those include to know and be known, love and be loved, connect with what I hold sacred, and repair the world. Whether this is your first visit or your 100th, I hope you'll find some of what you need today. I know for certain that there's a lot of connection, comfort, courage, and joy waiting for you in our beloved community. I'd like to offer a special welcome to those of you who are joining us for the very first time today. If you're interested in learning more, just complete a guest card, which you'll find in the pew rack in front of you, place it in the collection plate later in the service, and we'll make sure to get in touch. If you're watching remotely, we invite you to visit our website at uucleveland.org or just send us an email. I'd like to also offer a special shout out to a member of our GCC core team who's not up here on stage, as it were, but who's in the audience, and that's Pat Dillard. And she's so important to what we do. So welcome, Pat, and thank you. As we prepare to enter into sacred time and space, connecting with our deepest selves and one another, please take a moment to set any of your electronic devices to worship mode. We welcome Robert Staib as our Chalice lighter this morning. Bob is a member of the GCC core team, where he's most involved in the Juvenile Court Watch Initiative, which works to end youth bindovers. He also sings in the choir. Thanks, Bob, for all you are and do. Please join me, the rest of you, in reciting the words of our chalice lighting, which you can find on the yellow card in the pew rack in front of you. We cultivate trust with one another by celebrating differences, honoring boundaries, and offering compassion and care. We listen to each other deeply with curiosity and wonder. We speak for ourselves without need to defend ourselves or persuade each other. We create safe and brave space for healthy conflict, creativity, and fun. We reconcile through forgiving and making amends when we hurt one another.
Good morning. I'm Brandon Ruud, a member of the GCC core team, and I am delighted and honored to be present with you today and to be a member of the core team for the Greater Cleveland congregations. GCC is a nonpartisan coalition of faith communities and partner organizations whose mission is to be a powerful force for change, creating justice and opportunity for Greater Cleveland's by uniting our faith communities and civic partners across lines of race, class, and religion. GCC focuses on 5 key areas: voter engagement, criminal justice, health equity, gun safety, and economic democracy. But GCC's call to action and service is not exclusive to itself or to the core team you see up here. You, as members of the congregation, are a part of that work. Together, you have raised nearly $6,000 for GCC's health equity actions. You have participated in listening sessions detailing the concerns and issues most important to you, and you have sat in on numerous court and bind-over hearings. You have signed petitions and signed up and participated in dozens of actions to hold Cuyahoga County's elected officials accountable and improve the criminal justice system. You, whether you know it or not, are already treating organizing as a spiritual practice. This morning, we invite you to explore the many forms that this kind of work might take and to ponder what you might be called to do that only you can do.
Good morning. My name is Laurie Albright, and I also am a member of UUCC's Greater Cleveland Congregation's core team. And I am going to invite you to welcome each other this morning, but I first want to share this. Our UU values, confirmed at the 2024 General Assembly, are 6 in total, all imbued with the central value of love, liberating love. The values, as lovingly displayed on this beautiful quilt over here, are generosity, interdependence, pluralism, justice, transformation, and equity. Perhaps you've had some time to dive into each of these values, and you may have 1 or 2 that especially speak to you. In a few moments, we will sing together, "Love Will Guide Us," which is number 131 in our gray hymnal. But before we sing, please take a moment now to greet each other, especially someone you don't know or don't know well. And if you have identified a UU value that you especially value, consider sharing it in your greeting.
Good morning. My name is Mark Weber, and I'm a wayward member of the GCC core team. Our joys and concerns. Now's the time, I think, to acknowledge that we need one another, that we bring all sorts of things into this community, things that we're joyful about, things that might be burdensome, things that are sorrowful. If you're joining us online, I'd invite you to post any joys or concerns that you'd like the congregation to know about in the comments below the video. And if you're in person, we have a book where you can let everyone know what's happening with you. Written in the book for Sunday, August 3rd, is simply one thought, and that is that we remember the ongoing killing occurring both in Gaza and in Ukraine. And may there be an end to both conflicts soon. And now I'd like to invite any or all of you to please come forward and place a stone, one or more stones, in the bowl in order to acknowledge or to celebrate a joy or a concern. Please. finally, I would like to place 2 stones. One for all the unspoken joys and concerns that reside within us. And second, for all of the concerns, joys and concerns expressed by those who are joining us online. And a final thought, when we place the stones in the water and we celebrate a concern, the burden is lessened. And when we place a stone in the water to celebrate a joy, the joy is magnitude. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Jenni Papp. I am the Director of Lifespan Faith Development for this congregation. My pronouns are she and they. I really appreciate lay-led services because look how many people are up here and here. It's just, I really love them, and it's way more interesting, not to diss Randy or anything, but once in a while, Randy would agree with me that we love to hear other people's voices as well as not just our own. But here I am. Some weeks you're not with me either, and you get to hear someone else, so that's a good thing. This summer, our Unitarian Universalist Association met for their annual Continental Conference, both online and in person, with the theme throughout of Meet the Moment. And I did not attend. I've had an opportunity over the last month or so to plug in variously and listen to a lot of things, and there's still a lot more wisdom for me to hear. But that's been resonating throughout for the last month. So in hearing what all was happening in today's service, it led me to remember that when I first heard Meet the Moment, it made me think about this story, so I'm calling it Meet the Moment. Meet the Moment, right? Did you get it? Okay. So there is a beautiful forest way beyond the 7 seas and over 7 mountains, this gorgeous, lush forest, massive trees, and at the bottom, just the undergrowth was thick with life. And in this forest, as befitting such a magnificent place, there was a magnificent stag or deer, really magnificent, glossy brown coat, glossy brown coat with antlers that were as long and as large as its body, with so many branches in the antlers, never still long enough for anyone to count them all. Hunters heard of this great stag and traveled to the forest from all over, hoping to capture, kill it. And they would try, and they would arrive with their bows, and they would see it, and toom, toom. Can you do that? There we go, okay. This is where I need you. Pew. Okay, they just kept it missing. Well, eventually, the king heard of this, and the king thought, well, I am the greatest hunter, and I am going to travel to this forest, and won't it look magnificent, mounted high in my great room to show everyone what my prowess in hunting is. So they got out to the forest, and not long after they arrived in the forest, there they saw the great deer through there. And so they were. And they missed, and the deer took off. They went running through the forest. So the king, who's on horseback, which that's really fair, so heads through on their horse with all of their servants behind them on their horses through the forest and chasing. And every once in a while, seeing the deer, missing, more through the forest, seeing the deer, kept missing. Well, the king's horse was far faster. So soon they found themselves in the forest alone without any of their servants. They had left them behind. And they got to a point where the horse couldn't get through anymore. The king was really hot and tired and thirsty. And they dismounted and kind of looked around, and then they saw these kind of shining, glittering through the trees, and it looked like a pond. So they kind of made their way through the forest, and they got to the edge of the pond. And when they got to the edge of the pond, they just leaned over and fell in and began drinking and drinking until they were satisfied. And when they got ready to stand up, they couldn't right themselves. And not only were they having trouble, they were stuck. As a really quick aside, as a child growing up in the 70s and 80s, I thought quicksand was real. It was a clear and present danger to me at any point, and I needed to know how to get out of quicksand. So any of you who grew up in there, you knew quicksand would see everywhere. The king had come across some quicksand. And what happens? The more you struggle, the more he struggled, the more he sunk. And he called, but all of his servants were so far from him. No one could hear him. And he was sure that he was going to die. And then, poking through the brush, a nose came through the brush, looking, and then pretty soon the head of the stag came through the brush. It looked at the king, who was still sinking slowly, and it leaned forward and firmly planted its feet and put its antlers towards the king. The king looked, and the stag looked at the stag's eyes, and the king saw a very gentle invitation to take hold. So he took hold of the stag's antlers, and the stag backed up and pulled the king from the quicksand, saved the king's life from sure death. The king bows to the deer, and as kings do, reached into his pocket for gold and handed it forward towards the deer. The deer was not interested. In fact, the deer had already found some nice tender green leaves and was over snacking, nibbling on the bushes. The king realized that this gold was not what was needed. And the king came to the realization that the best thing that they can offer is to leave this deer in peace. So when they returned back to the palace, they made a proclamation, a very beneficent executive order that made a refuge of the forest so that hunters were no longer allowed. It was a sanctuary for the deer. And the hunter and the king never hunts again. Meet the moment. What did that deer have that met the moment? What unique demand was made of the deer that could meet that moment? And how was the deer able to do it? We don't know anything about the story from the deer's point of view. What we do know is that when that deer was presented with a situation that they were uniquely suited for, they acted. And when they did that, another being paused, maybe held up a mirror to examine themselves and their actions, and then to realign their actions to center love and care. Thank you so much for sharing that story with me this morning. You are appreciated.
Thank you, Jenny. The current bail system assumes that the best way to get someone to return to court is by requiring money from them as collateral. The work of Bail Project Cleveland offers powerful evidence about how an alternative system could look and function. Using donations, the Bail Project, our local chapter is just one of 30 nationwide, pays bail for thousands of low-income Americans every year. Through its model of community release with support, it also provides clients with court notifications and free transportation to court. In addition, the Bail Project helps clients navigate voluntary services like substance use recovery and housing. The result is that they return to over 90% of their court dates, even though they have no financial incentive to do so, avoiding lengthy jail stays and getting their lives back on track. This is what happened with Clevelander Akia Chambers, who says that just being able to appear in court from outside jail made her feel like she had a chance to be seen as more than a criminal in an orange jumpsuit. "I'm not being looked at as an inmate," she said. "I'm being looked at as a person who has their life together." Chambers says she's been able to learn from her mistakes and appreciate how far she's come. She hopes people see her as a person that never gives up, someone who doesn't let her past define her. Please support the work of the Bail Project by placing your offering, cash or check, made payable to UUCC, in the collection plate as it's passed. You can also contribute via CashApp to $UUCC 44122. Please use the memo line to indicate today's date, August 3, and our plate recipient, Bail Project.
the Amen Effect by Sharon Bruce. Rabbi Shalom Noach Berezowski wrote that every person has a special mission, specific to the time and the place in which they live. And every era of history carries with it unique challenges and opportunity. He writes, "Much is required of us. Though we do not fully understand it, we think that we live in a very great time in history, and we need to recognize the importance of our mission, our obligation, and our task in this generation. And we need also to utilize what has been given to us so that we do not squander the gifts that we have received." Well, each of us, we're asked to imagine, was brought into this world with some higher purpose. Well, what does this moment demand from me? How am I uniquely able, whether by circumstances or through the cultivation of gifts and abilities, to meet this moment? Our life's work is to hone the spiritual and moral clarity we need in order to live into our purpose, a purpose unique to us and to the time that we live in. Imagine that the world is waiting for us to hear the call and to show up in precisely the way and at the time that we are needed, to plant the seeds of hope and possibility in the darkest of moments, or to lovingly hold up a mirror, awakening us to the need to live in alignment with our beliefs. The words of Sharon Bruce. in this part of the service, we will interview 3 intrepid activists in GCC. Nearest me, Bob Staib, Laurie Albright, and Beverly Austin. They are going, my name is Anderson Cooper, Mark Weber, I'm sorry. I will ask these battle-hardened activists 3 questions that will get at what goes on inside of them that we may not see as they're marching or getting people to sign petitions. We'll start with the question, what values or experiences drive your motivation in your justice work with GCC? And how does that play out? Bob?
Thanks, Mark. As I started to think about this question, I had to think about values, and I started with where my values come from. For me, it's clearly my parents and my faith tradition. I was grew up in Philadelphia and raised as a Quaker. Quakers believe in the inner light, which is the divine spark in all of us, much like what we believe as Unitarians. And it compels us to treat others, all others, with love and compassion and social justice. That was my faith tradition. My parents were extraordinary examples to me. I have many memories as a very young child involved with service projects, kid-type projects, picking up litter that were sponsored by the American Friends Service Committee. And I have one very distinct memory of being at the Friends General Conference in July of 1965 when the Quakers decided to hold a protest, a silent vigil, against the buildup of military advisors in South Vietnam. So I got to stand with my parents on the boardwalk. So, and if you know the Jersey Shore, the boardwalk is a very popular place. So it was a very public place. And from there, things kept rolling. My father was a marshal at the mobilization in 1969. Throughout the war, he counseled conscientious objectors who were looking at options to military service. I was launched. And I have a whole list of things that I could talk about that I've done. I will just mention a couple of them. For 9 years, I was the co-director of Environmental Health Watch, which is an environmental justice organization here in Cleveland, still alive and well and thriving to this day. I was coming to a place where I had hit sort of a lull in terms of my activism. And then a wonderful thing happened. I joined UUCC. Full disclosure, I joined to sing in the choir. But when I found that UUCC was a member of GCC, I was thrilled, no exaggeration, because I knew about GCC and about the work that they do, and was very glad now to be able to contribute directly. As Greg alluded to, I've spent the vast amount of my time down at the juvenile court, observing hearings. They call them bindovers, where the court is contemplating transferring children to the adult court. I probably don't need to tell you that that's almost universally a bad idea. And our team across all of the congregations have viewed up to almost 150 court hearings. So that's where we are. So through UUCC and through GCC, I've sort of now found my activism has been renewed and revived. Laurie? Beth? Laurie?
Okay, so unlike Bob, I didn't have any particular spiritual tradition or family involvement growing up to model the way for me. I think part of my interest in what motivates me in the work that I do has to do with my experiences working for Positive Education Program, which serves kids, youth with serious behavior and emotional problems, autism, things that are quite difficult. And the honor and privilege of getting to know families at their most vulnerable times and supporting their children in these difficult things, and the barriers and the structures, the human-created structures around us that made it so hard for them to raise their children well, really got me thinking about things. And another thing I will point out is that in terms of principles and values, when I, 40 years ago or more, got involved with UUCC, then First Unitarian, the first principle really spoke to me, because I carry it with me in my heart, in my work, and in my family life, about that each person deserves dignity and respect and is worthy of love and care. And in the current set of values, the equity principle describes that and honors that. And so that's what keeps me, that's like my North Star. That's what does that. But I always think about how the world is right now and how I know it could be. We could have nice things in our country, like universal health care and ways to restore the community when harm is done, as opposed to our present system. So that's what drives me to collect signatures to support fair districts, fair wages, access to health care, and more. And so I'm also working on the restorative justice working group here in Cleveland, because there really could be a better way. And since this is all human-created systems, we're humans, we can impact and create this.
Well, I suppose my parents, my father and my stepmother were Unitarian Universalists, and they were both activists. And I've done things throughout my life, starting with when I was a teenager and I circulated the nuclear freeze petition. But I was kind of on the periphery with GCC for a long time, until more recently, when I was approached to be on when we reconvened our two congregations, and I was approached to be on the core team. And also, I think something that spurred me on to be more active was the jail. Some of you may remember that I believe it was in 2018, there were a series of deaths at the county jail, and I was really struck by the inhumanity of the conditions, and the fact that the majority of those people, as I recall, all but one, were just there awaiting trial. They hadn't been convicted of anything. And so that led me to become involved in the jail coalition at the time, and in the pretrial justice team through GCC later on. Currently, in addition to GCC, much of my activism is through Project Hope, which is an organization in Euclid that seeks to reduce gun violence in the community. Euclid has had an upsurge in gun violence in recent years, and I'm sure you read that we lost a police officer last year. And also through SURGE, which for those who don't know is Standing Up for Racial Justice. And that is an organization that seeks to thwart the president's agenda. And in both instances, I think that self-interest plays a big role in my involvement in those organizations, because I don't want to live in an unsafe community. I don't want to live under fascism. And I don't want for my family members and friends to live under those conditions either. That's all.
So tell us, do you get scared? And do you get discouraged? Do you often or ever wonder, gee, is this all worth it?
Well, the answer to the first question is, you betcha, I sure do. I am not a member of one of the groups that this administration is specifically targeting, other than for my political beliefs, but I am more afraid of the mob vigilante violence that has been purged by this president and by his followers So I'm very careful at public. I've worked hard not to let it discourage me from participating, but I'm much more careful and much more wary about engaging in public action. Discouraged? I'm fortunate. I do get somewhat discouraged, but I think I've been blessed with good brain chemistry. I wake up in a good mood every day, and I've lived long enough to see that I've lived long enough, I feel, to see the arc of history bend a little bit toward justice. I saw public pressure end a war, and I've seen huge advances in civil rights and LGBTQ and environment. So I'm optimistic about that. We're going through a terrible, terrible time. It's going to take a while to recover from it, but I feel confident that we will.
So sure, I get scared. The first couple of times I went out on street protests, I was way outside my comfort zone. Oh my gosh. But you know, the protest community in Cleveland they are so beautiful. They are so loving and caring. It's a great community, and so I'm always eager to be out and engage in those things now. But also, taking a pause is healthy. You just can't do everything. And one of my mottos is, do what you can and then let the rest go. Another thing that I have learned is true is something that I got from Tim to Christopher, which his comment was, action in line with my sentiment is the healing of the soul. Two other things that I want to lift up. One is from Rabbi Tarfon, who said, "You are not obligated to complete the work, but neither are you free to abandon it." And the second thing is, I have learned that growth comes from discomfort. I intentionally seek out social experiences outside my comfort zone. And each time I do, I not only learn, I'm glad I've done so. So I am happy to hold discomfort.
Yes, I get discouraged. I'm discouraged chiefly that I keep calling my United States senators and they keep voting in ways that are against my interests and the interests of most Ohioans. But I keep doing it anyway because I'm stubborn and because they work for me. They work for all of us, and eventually if they hear the same thing from enough people, something may influence them. Do I get scared? It's entered my mind. I mean, I also go to protests, and I've been doing that for a long time, and I also found it to be intimidating when I first started to do it. But do I get scared? Well, yeah, I mean, I think we're in a political climate now where you could easily be arrested. And I've never been arrested. And, you know, people tell me it's not that big of a deal. And of course, I am a person who is privileged enough that if there were to be bail, I would certainly be bailed out. My husband is a lawyer, so I've got all kinds of things on my side. But nonetheless, it's somewhat daunting, the prospect of it.
In our final question, of course, there are many ways that we can live out our values, but which types of activities, protests, actions resonate with you?
Thanks, Mark. The one that I challenge myself with the most, I mean, in addition to lobbying, writing letters, and going to protests, is to live by example, which is really the hardest one. And I think of that mostly in terms of the environment. I drove to church this morning. I really didn't need to. Could have ridden my bike. I could have taken the rapid. And in other ways, so that's really what I've been focusing on lately. The other thing, frankly, is that I've gotten older, but have enjoyed some modest prosperity in my life. I'm giving more, being more generous, and that's one of our values. And it took me a while to learn about that. I had a yoga teacher who explained that conventionally people think generosity follows abundance. In other words, you make a lot of money and then you give it away. He said it's just really the opposite, that abundance follows generosity. The more you give, not just of money, but of your time and your love, the more you'll grow in wealth.
How do you follow that? I think there's a role for all of us to play, and I certainly wouldn't want to encourage more Laurie Albrights in the world. I think we need a variety of ways to go about things. But what I work on is organizing things, developing networks, letter writing, supporting. I'm really interested in kind of the structures of things. But I think the most important thing for any of us to do is not feel called to do things simply by duty and kind of drag yourself into doing it because you know it's the right thing to do. I think where the joy and the healing of the spirit comes is in finding what each of our unique contribution is to this moment and engaging in it. In other words, find the work that makes your heart sing and heals your soul. And that's what I experience when I do the things I do in the justice arena.
How do you follow that? Copycat. Those of you who know me know that I work for Cleveland Public Library, and for close to 11 years prior to June, when I moved to a branch on the east side, I worked at a library branch on Fulton Road. So there are a lot of immigrants there. There are a lot of Latinos, and there are people from, Africa, the Caribbean, South America, and so having had that experience and met many of those people, I have a lot of interest in the immigration issue, and I want to be more involved in that. I think that this is a time when, we had the last surge meeting, we were all approached with, what do you want to be involved in, elections or immigration? And I said, well, both, but mostly immigration, because I just think we need to stand up for people right now, or at least I do. Thanks.
Thank you all, and a round of applause for some of us above a certain age remember the Chicago 7 or the Catonsville 9, and now we have the Unitarian 3. Thank
you. Our closing song today is When the Spirit Says Do. I encourage you to rise in body or spirit or both. You don't need a book for this. We're going to start with going to do When the Spirit Says Do, and then I'll just call out some other verses along the way. So let's just do it. You got to do when the Spirit says do. You got to do when the Spirit says do. When the Spirit says do, you got to do, oh Lord, you got to do when the Spirit says do. Spirit says do, 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 Spirit says do. You got to sing when the Spirit says sing. You got to sing when the Spirit says sing. When the Spirit says sing, you got to sing. Oh Lord, you got to sing when the Spirit says sing. 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 You got to march when the Spirit says march. You got to march when the Spirit says march. When the Spirit says march, you got to march, oh Lord, you got to march when the Spirit says march. says march. Spirit says march. You got to do when the Spirit says do. You got to do when the Spirit says do. When the Spirit says do, you got to do. Oh Lord, you got to do when the Spirit says do. 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 Spirit says do.
So, here are some things to do. So, for our announcements this morning, a few things. We are in the process of creating a WEE worship area in the front of our sanctuary, which enables us to continue to live out our welcome to families and children by creating a space to allow for them to more easily engage their spirits and their minds and their bodies, like we just did, in our worship experience. There was an email that went out yesterday that is a beginning, part one, of a little explanation to get yourself a little more info, so check that out. Next Sunday, August 10th, we invite you to bring any non-human members of your household for an outdoor service that will include a blessing of the animals. If the weather causes us to move indoors, we will all meet fin and fur in here. I am excited to announce that we have hired a new childcare provider. Her name is Becca Martin, and she is here today. You will learn a little bit more about her in the next week. We need more assistance from the congregation to take an occasional 2-hour shift with Becca to ensure that we offer the safest, loving UU welcome to our littlest UUs. So please reach out to me. We must have 2 adults in the room to meet our safety requirements, and right now we don't have enough people to do that. So you would be aunties and uncles and grandmas and pop-pops. See me. I have a place for you. It's very low engagement. Just play. We could all use a little more of that, right? The GCC core team will be at a table in the fellowship hall. Bring your questions, learn more about its role in our community and UCC's participation with that. Laurie will also have at that table UU our senators postcards and stamps and ideas for what you can put on your postcard. And if you do it today, she'll even mail it for you. The GCC team would also like to encourage you to move towards the narthex after the service to experience the music and video of the Flowbots performing Another World is Possible. Laurie first heard this at Youth and Young Adult Synergy service at GA, and she was inspired and wanted to share it with all of you. That is all for today's announcements. Thank you.
As we head back into the world, I'd like to share these words from the historian Howard Zinn. To be hopeful in bad times is not just foolishly romantic, it is based on the fact that human history is a history not only of cruelty, but also of compassion, sacrifice, courage, and kindness. If we remember those times and places, and there are so many, where people have behaved magnificently, this gives us the energy to act. The future is an infinite succession of presents, and to live now as we think human beings should live, in defiance of all that is bad around us, is itself a marvelous victory. Whatever has resonated with you this morning, Whatever your personal call to service might be, go in unison, go in peace, and go in action.
Please join me in extinguishing the chalice with the words found on the back of the yellow card in the pew rack in front of you. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.